Week 1 of the NFL is already in the books. And for the NFL season, we're going to be talking IDP every week. And with us today for our first guest for the regular season IDP show is Joey the Tooth. Joey is an IDP writer, ranker, and does projections for football guys. Joey, thanks so much for joining the show today.
Oh, not a problem, man. Thanks for having me on.
Hike!
So when we go through this IDP show, what we're going to be talking about is we're going to go through a stud, guy who really impressed us, a dud who maybe this person's kind of concerning. Maybe it's a bounce back, but they were a dud. And then a week 2 prediction to help you with your rosters in IDP. So Joey, why don't you start us off? Who was your stud of the week?
Will Anderson Jr., the Texans. His rookie debut game, 6 tackles and a sack. He was just dominant. And he had this kind of burden on his shoulders that everybody was wondering, what's he going to do? Is he going to take a while to progress like a lot of rookie edge defenders do? And he looked like a seasoned veteran out there. He's beating people inside. He's beating people with speed, with power. And he showed he can set the edge. He's racking up tackles. He got the sack. Will Anderson, he's the real deal, and he's legitimate top 5 dynasty asset, at least for the edge position, but he's definitely a top 10.
Joey, this is music to my ears. And you want to know why? I traded up for him in our dynasty league that happens to have IDP because I am in agreement with you. I thought Will Anderson was probably one of the better defensive end prospects we've seen, or edge rushers we've seen in quite some time. Thought he was better than Thibodeau. Thought he was better than Aiden Hutchinson. Better than Chase Young. So, I mean, I'm talking about this guy I think is an elite type of player. Now, I know, some draft experts will tell you, well, he doesn't have the bend like Von Miller, all this stuff. But for him to be able to do what he did at Alabama and get as many sacks as he did, I think I purposely wanted to go up and get him because I think it's really hard to find an elite pass rusher. I mean, we're talking about the likes of Nick Bosa, TJ Watt. I think he has that type of ceiling.
When you look at like Nick Bosa, people can say, but Nick Bosa doesn't have the most amazing bend either. He's honestly somewhat stiff in his approach, but it's just the use of his hands, his power, his spin move, speed. He gets it done. You don't need to have every single aspect to be a fantastic pass rusher if you're very good at everything else.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was excited about Will Anderson as well, during the draft process. And, to that point, I mean, even Aiden Hutchinson as well, he doesn't have that traditional bend either, but he just wins with power and want to really. And that's really, there's multiple ways to beat people. It doesn't have to just be the one way.
Right. Yeah, and people kind of forget, like in college, Will Anderson played off-ball linebacker too. So if needed, he could do a position switch. He could do kind of what Micah Parsons did year 1. I don't think he will because he was just so dominant on the edge. But he had, I think it was his sophomore year in Alabama, sophomore or junior year, he had over 100 tackles. So it's like the man can play off-ball linebacker if need be, and that was in the SEC. So
yeah, and I think that's the thing too. It's like DeMeco Ryans, I put stock in this, right? Your head coach, whatever their bent is, whether they're offense or defensive coach, they know how to coach up these guys. Mm-hmm. So, and he went to Alabama as well, so you got that connection. So I had a strong feeling that he'd be able to develop him the way he need to be. But, I mean, for him to do that right away is a huge, huge plus. I mean, we saw even the likes of Thibodeau. I mean, he dealt with that MCL, took him a while. Mm-hmm. Hutchinson, I want to say he kind of was more of a later bloomer as well in the season. Obviously had a good year. But, I think Will Anderson could even get 10-plus sacks for a rookie, which would be incredible.
Yeah, his potential is through the roof. I mean, week 1 is showcased, and it was against the Ravens. The Ravens, they have a good offensive line. So their tackles are fantastic. Was it Moses and Stanley? They're good. So
yeah, that's what I was going to say too. I mean, it's against the Ravens. Not only do they have a good offensive line, it's Lamar Jackson. He's a tough guy to sack alone just because of his elusiveness and the way that he can run and stuff too.
Right. So yeah, his potential's through the roof, and he's got a good matchup week 2. He gets to play Anthony Richardson and the Colts. So it's kind of a very similar matchup that he just played, but against a worse offensive line.
Man, where Josh Allen got 3 sacks.
Right, exactly. Josh Allen went ham last week. So, yeah, Will Anderson's my guy.
All right, the stud I'm going with is defensive end Montez Sweat. He recorded 5 tackles, 4 solo, had 1.5 sacks, and forced 2 fumbles. With a snap share of 82.3%. If you watch the game, Sweat just was very dominant against the Arizona Cardinals, and he's in a contract year, and you know what that means, Steve. He's looking to ball out the cash out this year.
That's right, Joe.
Much like his counterpart, Deron Payne that we saw last year.
Yeah, Payne got himself a nice contract from it, and then disappeared in week 1.
Well, once he got paid,
once you get paid, all bets are off. But when you need to get paid, you ball out.
But yeah, Sweat's good, and I really like him. I've always liked him over Chase Young because Chase Young had that good rookie year, and then Young just the injury bug hit him, and he hasn't been himself since. And Sweat's just been kind of doing it nonstop. I mean, I don't think he's had less than 7.5 sacks in a season, and he's always had over 40 tackles. And he's been working on his run defense too. He's setting the edge better. He's looking a little stronger to match that speed that he's always had. So I think he's definitely. I think this could be his best season yet, matched with that contract year.
Montez Sweat is super underrated. Like you said, Joe, he's not a flashy guy. Consistent, though. Consistent floor. I wonder if he'll even do better with Chase Young. I mean, I don't know this off the top of my head, but how many games have they both played at the same time? Probably very little. Yeah. So with the two of them there, plus in the middle, Jonathan Allen, one of the best interior defensive linemen in the whole NFL, and Deron Payne. Mm-hmm. I mean, if this defensive line can be one unit, watch out.
I was thinking that at the beginning of last year too. It's like if that defensive line can just stay healthy, it's fierce, but it's Young just can't stay healthy. He just can't, and it's so sad to see. I want to see it so badly. I want to see like a healthy Chase Young because he showed glimmers of it his rookie season, but just can't do it. I can't do it. I don't think he's washed from almost all of my teams. I've either traded him away or just I'm not drafting him. I just can't do it.
So my stud of the week was edge rusher Drake Jackson. He recorded 2 hurries and 3 sacks, which ended up matching his total amount of sacks he had in his rookie year after playing 15 games. He ranked 12th in his pass rush grade, according to PFF, at 77.7 on only 26 pass rush snaps. Drake Jackson, if you remember coming out of college, out of USC, he was highly regarded, but was very up and down during his career in USC. I believe he was going to be a top 5 draft pick until he dealt with some weight issues. Whoever is opposite the reigning defensive player of the year with Nick Bosa is probably going to be a good thing. So the Steelers' offensive line has been notoriously bad. But they tried to fix it. Maybe they didn't. But if this could be a sign that Drake Jackson, could be in for a breakout. I'm not sure I'm buying it 100%, but it's something I'm monitoring moving forward. Even Cleveland Farrell, he actually looked pretty decent. He's been horrible with Las Vegas. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens there, but some promise for sure.
Yeah, as a 49ers fan, I love seeing it. I actually, in my Football Guys article, I wrote up Drake Jackson. So I do a streaming article every week of defensive line streaming article, 2 edge defenders, 2 interior defensive linemen, and then a sleeper for each position. And Drake Jackson was one of my edge defenders. So when I saw him put up 3 sacks, I was like, that's going to get a subscriber.
Oh, hey, yeah, I know what that's like, man. And hopefully you do, because that was a money pick if someone actually started him.
But yeah, I think the biggest thing for his growth and for that team in general was finding an interior pass rusher, because I mean, Eric Armstead, he's been kind of hit or miss. Javon Kinlaw hasn't lived up to his hype, and you bring in Javon Hargrave. He already came up with a sack. It's his first game there, so it's like you add interior pass rush to go along with Bosa and Drake Jackson on the edge. Like, who do you guard? What do you do? You're collapsing the pocket. They have to go on the outside. You have your 2 speed rushers on the outside. So it's going to be terrible for other teams right now. If that pass rush can keep up, the 49ers defense is just going to be dominant.
Yeah, I mean, especially if they keep scoring the way they do and get the lead. I mean, that's the thing. Like, Steelers' offensive line might be improved, but 49ers D-line is that good. And then, couple that with the negative game script because of the way the score got a hand early.
Yep.
That's just time for these pass rushers to feast, and they did.
Yeah, I mean, if the Steelers were able to run the ball, I mean, I think Najee Harris had 5 yards per carry, but he only had 6 carries because they were behind the entire game.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good call.
So heading over, well, it's a validating call, right? Confirming what you said, and now we got 2. So we get Joe to agree. We got all 3 of us buying in on Drake Jackson.
Well, hey, man, I'm just regretting not playing Drake Jackson in the RSO league.
I had him on the bench in a couple leagues too, even though I wrote him up streaming option.
Oh, no.
I mean, I have tons of shares of him because I'm a 49ers fan. So
True. All right, we'll let it slide. We'll let it slide this go around. So are you enjoying this video so far? Well, if you are, show your support to our new channel by hitting the subscribe button and liking this video. We'll be creating videos all NFL season long, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. Going over to the duds, though. What are your guys' duds for week 1? We'll start again with you, Joey. What are your thoughts?
All right. Staying in the NFC West, Uchenna Nwosu, he had a career year last year in Seattle, and he went up against the Los Angeles Rams, whose offensive line was possibly the worst in the NFL last season, and he came away with 3 total tackles, 1 solo. It was just like, he looked absolutely terrible. I mean, he couldn't get to the quarterback. The entire Seattle Seahawks team looked just discouraged, and I'm incredibly worried about Nwosu because he doesn't have anybody on the other side who's daunting by any means. Boye Mafe, Daryl Taylor, there's nobody that strikes fear, so he's going to have all of the attention. They don't really have interior pass rush either, so he's really their main pass rusher. And it kind of showed with all the extra attention week 1. And week 2, it's not going to get any easier for him. I mean, he's going to go against the Lions, who only gave up 1 sack week 1. They have one of the best offensive lines in football. And I think it's going to be another week where you kind of want to avoid Nwosu.
Yeah, I mean, Nwosu had a breakout season like he did last year. I wasn't expecting it. And then he did what he did in Seattle. I believe it was a prove-it deal, and it was able to got paid. But, it's tough with IDP because it's really feast or famine. Sometimes you're going to have, Drake Jackson's not going to get a sack for the next 3 games. I remember when I had Chandler Jones one year, he had 5 sacks in week 1. And I was like, I'm going to win. I win my matchup. He's going to have an unbelievable year. And then he gets sacked for like the next 7 games. Like, you got to be kidding me.
Finished the season with like 7.5 sacks.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So, but I am with you. His support staff is not great.
Yeah.
I want to say I was kind of surprised. I think Daryl Taylor, I think I saw like his pass rush win rate was pretty decent this past game. But, like you said, they got Boye Mafe. They also drafted that Derek Hall, I think, also from Auburn as well. So I don't know.
It's a lot of young guys. And
exactly.
It's just so they're all kind of specialists. Mafe, he's a good run defender, and he's a spotty pass rusher. Daryl Taylor is a terrible run defender, but a very good pass rusher. And then you have Derek Hall, who's a rookie, who's going to be working his way into snaps. And then you have Nwosu, who's their premier pass rusher, but he has all of this youth and spotty play across the other side that nobody's really worried about. It's like, we'll take care of this guy, and we'll take our chances with these guys.
Now, I didn't watch this game as closely, but what was Draymond Jones' impact? Because that was a big free agent addition. I don't know if you watched it or monitored it all. I was curious.
It'd be more, but I mean, I like just watching the Seahawks. The entire team was frustrated. It showed in DK Metcalf when he threw the cheap shot in the corner. It was like the entire team was frustrated. They were off their game. I mean, Geno Smith looked terrible. He looked terrible. And it was like, did you see the play with Aaron Donald coming up the middle? It was somebody put a thing on it. It was like, watch Geno Smith's reaction. So Aaron Donald runs a stunt and he gets a free run straight towards Geno Smith. And you see Geno, he's going through his progressions and just jumps back and just gets rid of the ball. Just throws it straight across the middle. And he was just so scared to get hit by Donald. It's like,
wow. I can't say I blame him.
I know. Not at all. In the way that guy trains.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I'm as a 49ers fan, I love to see the Seahawks struggling so bad. But if I'm a Seahawks fan, I'm incredibly worried after watching how badly they just played against the Rams.
Yeah, like you say, Eve, I'm a little surprised that Draymond Jones didn't have a little more impact to be able to free up the guys like Uchenna and Wusu coming off the edge. You know, you saw he was able to create the pass rush and played the run decently with Denver. So thought he would have created a little more push, helping those outside rushers as well.
Yeah, he didn't really show up too much, but it's week one. I
Yeah.
have more faith in Draymond Jones' impact on the interior than I do in Wosu on the edge. But it's week one.
Time will tell, Joey.
Yep.
Time will tell, Joey. Time will tell.
Yep, that makes sense. So my dud of the week, I'm going with Hassan Reddick. You know, he recorded one tackle with a 72.5% snap share this week against the Patriots. Now, while Reddick was disappointing, I think things will turn around for him. I mean, he did have 5 pressures, so he was kind of getting to the quarterback, just wasn't able to get the sack. And he did have an above rate average pressure rate at 19.1% as well. So I do think things will turn around, you know, for him in future weeks. But it's just disappointing if you played him, you know, being that he had such a great year last year and even been a pretty consistent player over the last couple of years.
Yeah. I have faith that Reddick's going to be all right. Like you said, he had 5 pressures. This week was incredibly disappointing, but I mean, that defensive line in Philly is remarkable. And Jalen Carter now in the middle with Jordan Davis, those two together, they were just vicious. Jalen Carter was tied for first in the entire league in pressures this week. That's a rookie interior lineman. That's unbelievable. And then Jordan Davis had 6 tackles and a sack, or 6 tackles and a half a sack. It's like, yikes. Those are 2 big, young, athletic men. And then you have Reddick Sweat, and Nolan Smith, and I'm missing somebody.
Brandon Graham.
And you have that entire defensive line is just frightening. So when you look at their sack rate last year, where they had 4.5 sacks a game, and their finish rate was remarkable. They didn't even lead the league in pressures, but they were by far had the most sacks per game, and it's just because of that depth. So I have faith that Reddick will eventually. He's the high snap share guy, so he's gonna get his. But yeah, week one was a gut punch.
Yeah, I think the Hassan Reddick play or what happened with him this last week, I think is a blip. You know, I think expect greater things. The hurries are a great indicator. That's why I'm an advocate of even including hurries in your scoring because, you know, they didn't get the sack, but they caused the play to not go well. You know, like he should be able to get something for that, but I know it's somewhat more of a subjective type stat. But yeah, I think that to me, in some ways, if you have a lot of hurries, I actually find it an encouraging thing because that tells me you are around the ball. It just so happens that the quarterback just threw it out of his hand, you know, fast enough that you couldn't get the sack. Or even QB hits. Both of those are kind of a nice, you know, measure to say, okay, you were around to possibly make a play. But real quick tangent there. I thought Jalen Carter was going to be good. That was unbelievably good.
Mm-hmm.
And interior defensive linemen take a long time typically to develop. Right? Dexter Lawrence, I thought he was done for. Then all of a sudden I had that breakout year last year. I talked about recently, just last week, about Derek Brown. Derek Brown, unbelievable. You know, week one, thought he could do it, but he had an incredible one. But these defensive tackles take a while to develop. For Jalen Carter to do this right away, that is like, wow. Like, we're talking about this guy could be. I'm not saying he's an Aaron Donald player. I'm just saying that I think he could make the impact from a fantasy perspective as much as he did. They're not going to have the same playing style. But in Jordan Davis, you know, people were like, he's just a nose tackle. So when I actually didn't even watch the game that closely, but when I looked at the box score and I saw what he did, I was like, what? Did Jordan Davis decide to just show up now? I was
There's
like,
not
okay.
many nose tackles that can move the speed that man can move at. It's unbelievable how athletic Jordan Davis is at his size. Mind blowing to me. And he's so strong. It's like you match that right next to Carter. It's like, well, what are you going to do? And then you get the guys coming off the edge. There's literally nothing you can do as an offensive line. Just hope you win your matchup. That's all you can do. Hope you win your matchups.
Yeah.
So my dud of the week, and this is going to pain me, and it's going to pain our friend of the show, Josh Raymer, even more. That's safety Kyle Hamilton. I know he was pounding the table for him, as was I. But boy, he did not do so well. He was 8th in total snaps for safeties, and he had a pretty high PFF grade as well. 76 total snaps. But over half of those snaps were at free safety. And anytime a safety predominantly plays at that free safety role, you know that you're hoping for pass deflections and you're hoping for interceptions. And if they don't get it, then you're not going to get anything out of them. You want them to get those box snaps because they're closer to the ball, more likely to get those tackles. So as a result, didn't happen for him. He did play C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans. I don't know. I didn't watch it as closely. So were they airing it out as much? Maybe if he was playing Josh Allen and the Bills, he probably would have had 3 picks like Jordan Whitehead. But I'm still salty. Neither here or there. But Marcus Williams had a solid day, but it looks like he appears to have torn his left pectoral tendon, which could be a season-ending injury for him, or if not, it's going to be multiple weeks. And Hamilton only recorded 3 total tackles, with 2 of them being solo. Now, Hamilton is a jack of all trades. I mean, this is a guy who I think is a generational type safety prospect. And what I would tell you is, if there's anyone panicking on him, I will tell you this right now. Go buy him. Mm-hmm. Go get him. Acquire him, because this is not what I think. I would be shocked. I'd fall over in my chair if he's not a really good player. I think he's going to turn it around. I think it's just, him based on the situation. This is what's happened. But what do you guys think? That's my thoughts when it comes to Kyle Hamilton.
Oh, Kyle Hamilton. I think he'll be all right. My biggest worry is if Patrick Queen has a good year, and the fact that they drafted Simpson.
Trenton Simpson, yep.
Yeah, so my hope was that they were going to run a lot of one linebacker sets. It was going to be Roquan Smith, and then Kyle Hamilton was going to use his ability as a linebacker, because he played pretty much small linebacker in Notre Dame for a good portion of his career. So I was hoping he was going to move up into the box more, play like that box role, second linebacker, but maybe roaming linebacker. It doesn't look that way right now. It looks like Simpson's going to fill in for Patrick Queen once Patrick Queen's gone, or unless Patrick Queen has a great year and he keeps progressing and they re-sign him, it almost seems like they're going to move back to a cover 2, and it's going to be Marcus Williams and Kyle Hamilton playing deep just to keep everything underneath. Because, I mean, when you have good linebackers in front of you, you're not going to let anything go over the top. So that's why I think he was so deep, because Marcus Williams, he's obviously a free safety. And the fact that Kyle Hamilton lined up that many snaps at free safety makes me feel like they're running more of a cover 2 type defense. So that's what worries me about it. His talent level is phenomenal. He can move up to the slot if need be. I mean, there wasn't really much going in the slot last week because they were blowing out Houston. So, I mean, they were throwing outside. C.J. Stroud was throwing outside all the time. And was it Brandon Stevens for the Ravens had like 11 tackles. So it's like a lot of it was going to the sideline. It was going outside. So there wasn't really much going through the middle. But the fact he's lining up deep worries me a little bit.
Yeah, I know that, like you said, man, Josh is going to be disappointed. You guys both were really liking the breakout for Kyle Hamilton, but it is just week 1. But I guess, the injury to Marcus Williams, though, does that mean he's just going to fill in that free safety role too? I don't really know what the depth is at safety and who could possibly fill in. So, that definitely will be something to monitor.
I think it's za'darius Washington, who was a rookie, I think 3 years ago. I actually liked him as a rookie. But he's just a smaller guy. He's got a nose for the football. He tackles well, but I don't know who's going to take what role. But the thing is, it almost looks like a cover 2, so it almost looks like too deep, which kind of that's what makes me worried about Kyle Hamilton this year. But still buy him, because if they do not play a cover 2, that changes. If they were just playing that because they had a lead and they didn't want to get beat over the top. If Kyle Hamilton plays at all in the box, he's going to rack up tackles. It's not going to be Patrick Queen if Kyle Hamilton's anywhere near him.
So going over to our week 2 predictions, what are your your tip or the IDP Pro tip of the week that you would provide.
All right. I would play Dennis Gardick. I'm actually writing him up in my Football Guys article for streaming defensive lineman. He had a fantastic week 1. He had 3 tackles, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble. If you date back even to 2020, when he actually had legitimate playing time due to injury, he came up with 7 sacks. 21 and 22, he barely played. He was just a complete depth role. But the thing with Arizona is they don't have any depth. Like, they have 0 depth on that team. It's young players, it's unproven players, and it's Gardick. So he's going to be their number 1 pass rusher, it seems like, and he produced week 1. So you go into week 2 and he's playing the New York Giants, who Daniel Jones just got completely beat up. Granted, it was the Dallas Cowboys, and they led the league in pressures in 2022, and it looks like they're going to be right there again in 2023 with that defensive line. But they still gave up 7 sacks, and they did not look good at all. And if you need somebody to stream Dennis Gardick, because if there's going to be anybody in that Cardinals defense that can take advantage of that offensive line, it's going to be him.
Yeah, I like it. I almost went with that one myself. But for my tip of the week, it's going to be looking at the Browns D-line, and I like Za'Darius Smith to get his first sack as a Brown this week. He's coming off a week 1 performance where he had 4 quarterback hits on 6 total pressures, had a 16% win rate and a 24% pressure rate with an overall PFF pass rush grade of 84.4%. Steelers just came off a game where they gave up 5 sacks to the San Francisco 49ers, had a passing block grade, PFF grade of 31. And I just like Myles Garrett and Za'Darius Smith to just come off those edges and wreak havoc on Kenny Pickett.
Man, what a tough 2 weeks for Pittsburgh, huh? You deal with that 49ers pass rush and just followed up by the Cleveland pass rush. That's just tough.
Yeah.
I think Za'Darius Smith might be the best running mate that Myles Garrett has had in his career. He's super underrated. I wondered how he would do transitioning from a 3-4 to more of a 4-3 type of front, because that's what he's predominantly been with Baltimore and Minnesota. So, but no, I was watching that game. He was all over the place. I'm with you, Joe. I think he'll do real well. I think the Steelers are going to be in some trouble. So my IDP Pro tip of the week is for linebacker Ernest Jones. Better start him, because I think he's going to continue his breakout start. I think he's going to record over 12 plus tackles in his next game against the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers have the 4th highest rushing grade on Pro Football Focus, and Christian McCaffrey tied, which was surprising to me, I have to admit. When I'm wrong, Joe. But he tied for the most amount of carries amongst all running backs in week 1. And Ernest Jones had 9 total tackles, 5 assisted, and 3 tackles for loss. So do not be like Joe, who didn't start him last week. You should start him because he's on a depleted but young defense. I think he's going to have a ton of tackle opportunities because of the game script. I think what's going to end up happening is Niners are going to get ahead really early. They're going to be running the ball a ton. Rams are going to be trying to pass it. A lot of 3 and outs. Ernest Jones is going to be on the field a ton. And as a result, I think he's going to do very, very well. So, Joe, you better start him too. I'm telling you this right now.
He's in my lineup, Steve. I'm putting him in over Devondre Campbell.
I like it.
It's official.
I mean, I had Levante David, CJ Mosley, and Campbell, man. I mean,
Went with the vets.
I went with the vets, but yeah, I mean, he was my highest scoring linebacker though.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. Ernest Jones, he's going to have a great year. That defense is just, I mean, I wanted to say it wasn't great, but they just handled Seattle pretty easily. So I don't really want to talk too much about it, but I don't see it being sustainable through the entire year with the way that defense is. They're young, but they're inexperienced. There's, outside of Jones and Aaron Donald, there really isn't much there. I mean, Michael Howick, I think it's Howick. I'm not sure how you pronounce the last name, but there's him. there's Byron Young, the rookie from Tennessee, John Johnson, but I don't even know if he even played much last week at all. It's just, I don't see it ending well for the Rams. I mean, sure, nice upset week 1, but I can't see them getting past like 4 wins at most, and Ernest Jones playing a ton of snaps.
Oh yeah, that defense is an absolute shambles. And honestly, even those who play IDP probably don't are like who. When you said Michael Hoach, they probably don't even know who he is. I know who he is, but do you know who he is, Joe?
No.
Converted interior defensive lineman. He now plays outside linebacker. So due to injuries last year, he moved from the interior to outside linebacker last year. He's like 310 pounds playing outside linebacker, and he finished the last 8 games with like 30 tackles and 4.5 sacks, I think it was. So for a big man moving outside like that, it's like, hey, give him some love.
So that covers our studs, our duds, and our week 2 predictions to help you for your starting lineups. Joey, thanks so much for joining the show today. Where can others find your great work?
You can find all my work at footballguys.com, rankings, projections, all my articles. I do a weekly article, D-line streaming articles, edge, interior defensive lineman, then 2 sleepers. So watch that every week. Comes out Wednesday. And other than that, just keep playing IDP. Keep trying. Keep playing. You have to do it. It's fun.
We agree entirely. You got to give it a shot. It's a lot of fun. And check out that article. Joey had Drake Jackson in his article, and that could have caused you a win in your league. So go ahead and check that article. But thank you so much for watching, and until next time.